Now we have to turn our attention to the decks, more specifically the bow and the stern decks, these two pieces. I must admit that right out of the box they're pretty decently designed. They have lots of detail, and it's kind of a shame that I'll have to butcher a lot of these detail in order to fit the Flyhawk set, one of which would be the decks, which you must admit right out of the box look pretty damn decent. I mean, look at that. We have simulated wood grain and planks, which is great if you don't want to put some balsa wood decks, but I'm gonna have to do it. Also, we have to remove some other surface details such as the tie downs and some stubs, and we have to do some major surgery in order to fix some of the things that plague this model from the box. So you might have noticed some pencil marks on the bulkheads here, and these are the compartments that you have to cut out. Unfortunately, on the kit they're not present, and on the ship they are, and Flyhawk kind of remedies this problem by giving you compartments that go underneath here. So that's something that we have to tackle first. So these are the plans for the modification on the Flyhawk's stand side. So as you can see, the front deck, this is how it looks from the original, and you need to remove all these pieces. Right here, I'm going to take it closer. You see, these are all new pieces, and I have to make this as blank as possible. So here goes. Alright, so this was both exciting and terrifying at the same time. I'm not really sure if I have to remove this piece. Spoiler alert, I do have to remove that piece. Have to check, but this is so far what I have to remove. And I also have to sand down these smaller tie downs. So let's get cracking. There are many ways to remove surface detail from a model. In this case, I was using two methods. One would be to use a very coarse sanding file. This is a diamond tip file, and I had to be really careful how to sand this down because it could go sideways really quickly. The other tool that I found really useful in this particular instance would be Tamiya's flat tip blade, which is used to scoop up the surface detail rather than to cut into it. Well, it actually cuts into it, but you scoop it up from the bottom. It's very important to have the tapered edge on the bottom so that you lift up the material rather than to push the blade down into the plastic. This type of tool gives you lots of control over the surface you're working on, how many layers you're removing and how deep you're cutting into, and the end result is much smoother compared to using sanding sticks. And this is the result of all that cutting, scraping and sanding. Note that I have to remove these things as well, and I'll do them off camera because I forgot. Okay, so this is the Flyhawk's deck cut from its wooden sprue here. It's a really fine piece of, it's almost like veneer-like, but it's balsa wood. It's really thin. I don't know how thin this is, maybe just a millimeter thin. Let me take you out a little bit. Okay, so this thing is really fragile, and it's kind of annoying to release all the little cutouts here. I mean, they are sort of pressed in, punched in, but you do need to use a very sharp blade to go all around and to release it from the wood sprue here, and then to actually punch out all the little different cutouts that are they need to be cut out from this thing. Anyway, this kind of falls into place just like so, and I just realized that I have to actually remove these supports in the side. And it makes a huge difference to the deck. It's really a nice addition to the kit. Now the other thing that it's a little bit annoying is that the deck is supposed to be like, it has a film in the back and it's like sticky, right? The pieces, this is a cutout from the center. And it has a stickiness to it, but if you stick it onto the board, it will stick, but look how easy it is to remove it. And this is not really something to boast about too much. So what I'm gonna do is to do a double glue. I mean, there is a technique that I've seen on YouTube on a scale modeling channel called Midwest Model Shop, where they've made a Titanic in 200 scale, and basically they took the deck and put it and removed the protective film. Then they applied some white glue on this side and put some wafer paper on it, so very thin gift wrap paper. And then they attached all this to the deck. Now I'm gonna skip one part and I'm just gonna use wood glue. So this stuff, I'll just put glue on the deck and a little bit on here. Of course I'll remove the protective cover and then just press it onto the deck, and hopefully that's gonna work, because this stuff really sticks very well to all the surfaces. I'll just clean it off so that it'll be nice and smooth. So I'll try this on this deck, and then if it works well, I'll use the same technique on the other decks as well. But before I actually attach this to this, I need to remove these supports here, and of course I need to cut out the hole. So that's next. This is the deck of the bow of the ship turned upside down. We need to do some surgical procedures here. We need to cut out this and this in order to fit the compartments below. The missing compartment is provided by the Flyhawk expansion set. Here you have to bend the sides upwards to make a rectangle. Then you fit in balsa wood deck. Then you take this bulkhead piece that's also present in the Flyhawk expansion kit, make a little extended M, and kind of position it inside the compartment like so, and glue it in place. And this is the finished product. As you can see, it's all photo etch with balsa wood, and it's really fragile. All these pieces need to be bent at right angles and very carefully and slowly, otherwise they will break and you'll have trouble gluing them in place. I used lots of thin super glue from VMS to hold up the surfaces and make them sturdy enough for manhandling. After you made the cuts marked here in orange, looking from the bottom up on the bow deck, this is the cut. Then we position the compartment over top, making sure that the hole for the mast is inside the compartment. I recommend to make the cutout hole a little larger than it's supposed to be, because there's a faceplate that comes on top of it and covers the hole. This is the photo etch faceplate looking towards the bow. You have to make the hole inside larger than the opening so that the compartment fits snugly towards the faceplate. Otherwise you have to do some improvisation like I did. Okay, so I've finished mock assembly of the compartment inside this little hole here that I've cut out. Now the only thing that it's fixed and glued in place is the front plate, and the rest I'm just holding by hand. As you can see, I've kind of made a little bit of a rectangle filler to make sure that there's a nice and smooth transition between one compartment and the other. Otherwise this would look really wonky and strange. Now it's still a little early because it's still setting. The glue hasn't set quite well. Well, you get the idea. I'm sort of happy with this modification, but I see that Flyhawk's photo etch detail inside is a little bit off when it comes to doors. The side doors on this side are a little too close to this wall, and here it's okay, so it's not gonna matter because you're not gonna look inside there anyway. It's just that you have this full view. Now before I actually glue this in place, I have to paint it in the appropriate colors, because after that I won't be able to come with the airbrush or brush inside and I'll mess up the whole compartment. So I'll prime it, paint it, and glue it in place. To give you a better idea of what to do, we need to paint the inside bulkhead. Then we need to go to the faceplate and attach the doors. Make a makeshift pipe and bend it. attach the steps, and then paint the faceplate. Boom! The tricky thing about this particular step is going to be to mask off the upper section to protect the white and paint the bottom in this light brown. I've used this before on my first Titanic, and it's for the interior orangey brown color that you see going all around. I'll show you in the picture. Alright, so let me mask this bad boy off somehow and we'll come back. Alright, so I've managed to mask it off. I just was looking at the reference photos. I mean, the fact is that these two portholes are too big. Even in this scale, this should be much smaller. But I'm not going to lose too much sleep over it. The same problem I had with the Revells Titanic, where this inner piece was one piece and I had to mask it off the same way. So basically, there I didn't have a choice in how I masked it off. Here I kind of screwed myself up a little bit by doing the bend first and not painting it. It's basically 50-50. I kind of eyeballed it. It's very hard to measure on certain angles, but I'll do a double check before I actually go painting if I have to correct it. But this is how it has to be done. Okay, so this is how it turned out. I'm pretty happy with it. The key to this is to spray it in very light coats. Don't overdo it and do slowly, because if paint starts to pool, it will cause you trouble. Before I actually glue it in place into the hole, I have to put some clear plastic behind it to simulate the window, since we have a porthole, and that will be the end. So this is what the finished product looks like when it's finished. It's painted up. We have our clear acrylic plastic on the back. I've used Transpafix to do this transformation because it's really good. The only thing that I don't like about Transpafix is that this nozzle here clogs up. This nozzle clogs up really quickly, and it's kind of annoying. But anyway, this is how it looks, and this is our first Titanic piece finished. Now let's move on to the rest. Okay, so in the interest of being cohesive with my build, I want to finish this front section before we actually move on to the aft and all the other pieces on the Titanic. Here we have to finish this plate with some extra additions, one of which can be seen here. So we are currently here in this build, and this is the revised instruction, where we have to place down these doors, these hatches, and this little door and the ladders. Now we can't put the steps in just yet because we need the deck in place for this, and we can't put the stairs in place because we need to put the deck in first. So we will put the doors here, and another thing that we need to put in is a little pipe. A pipe, you ask? Well, I'll put a picture up somewhere in the corner. Here you'll see actually a pipe running up and inside here. Now I will simulate this by using just a bent plastic rod. Nothing fancy, but we need to add it in because it's a feature. And you also see that this corner and this corner are kind of rounded, and here are kind of sharp. Now I can't do anything about that. I thought about maybe putting some sort of round piece here, but it will just complicate things too much, and I really don't want to complicate this build. I just want to do it as easy and as carefree as possible. The only thing that I need to finish is the two doors here, here, and the ladder that goes up. So that's what I'm going to do now. Right, so these are the small photo etch doors that go on to the photo etch part here. Now there's a couple of questions that you need to ask yourself, and I'm asking myself right this very minute as I'm filming this. First of all, how to place them in the right order. Now I know that the ladder goes right here because here are the steps to go up on this deck from here to here, and then the doors go 1, 2. But how high from the deck do they need to be placed, because there are 2 steps here as well. And the other thing is, this is not 0, this is below 0, because remember, I'm going to be placing down a wood deck which is going to be 1 millimeter higher, so I have to take this into account when I'm placing the doors. So the logical conclusion to this would be to put the deck in, but just mock in to see how far I need to be, then to assemble the 2 steps that go to the door, and then place the door. So, yeah. Now, to give you a little bit of an understanding of how ludicrously small these pieces are, like this are the steps that go, right, these are the steps. So, that's this step right here, right? This is so small. Here you can see the step, how it needs to be folded. Holy crap, I actually did it. I folded it into the correct shape. It's really delicate, you have to be very careful. This thing can break like there's no tomorrow. Here I have already mocked up this door and step, but the step fell down now because, you know, I'm filming and of course everything is gonna go wrong now. And the next challenge is to attach it. Now using cement is out of the question because cement doesn't work with photo etch parts. And using super glue is a nightmare because I have to be really quick and really precise, and it's not gonna work. Even though that I have a slow drying one, even the slow drying one takes mere seconds to attach. So I'm gonna use the next best thing, and that is Tamiya's X22 clear gloss varnish. I've used this previously and it works well. The only thing that you need to do is to scuff up the back plate and the back of the door so that the varnish has something to grab on to. So that's what I'm gonna do to attach these bad boys. Alrighty, so after much swearing and cursing, I've been able to attach these 5 doors. So we have 2 on each side and a little small door here. I've done it using clear gloss varnish from Tamiya X22 and a brush. I flooded the area, put the photo etch pieces on, and then positioned them into the correct order the way that I think they're supposed to be, because the instructions are not really specifically clear on how to attach them and where to attach them. It's just a general area, so I was eyeballing it. That's why I have these 2 blue tapes here to represent the ladders that are missing, which have to be attached, but I'll do them after the thing is painted because they're black, and painting them by hand on a painted surface, it's just a nightmare. Trust me, it's gonna be much better this way. The last thing that I need to attach here is the brass pipe. I'm gonna use brass to make a little pipe that goes all along the upper edge and inside the compartment. So that's the next job, and hope that it works out well. Well, here's a little unforeseen problem. This pipe that is supposed to go around, across and over is kind of conflicting with the height of the doors, and that's not really good. So I don't really know at this point how to remedy this problem right now, because the pipe is supposed to go into this small compartment, but as you can see, you only have to have 1 L bend. In this situation, in this instance, I would have to have, well, 2, 1 here. Yeah, that's an interesting problem. I didn't think about that. All right, so I'm kind of finished with this modification. I couldn't do it the way you see it on the picture because there's just not enough room, so I had to do some modification, and I had to make this gnarly bend on the piece of brass wire. Actually, not, this is not brass wire, it's brass tube, because I didn't have a wire. Don't ask me how I did the bend because it was magic. Black magic. But anyway, you get the idea. This is how it's supposed to go now. It goes up, round, down, and in there. I mean, it's sort of realistic, but not quite the way it's on in the picture. Which is a shame, but you know, we gotta live with it. All right, so this is what I've done to the bend. If you can see it, it's bent inwards and to the side, so it looks somewhat realistic. And this is gonna work out just well. Bam! So this is different. It's black. More specifically, semi-gloss black from Tamiya, X18. The reason this is black is because of 2 things. First of all, I want to give a nice contrast to deck, because the wooden deck is really transparent. It's not transparent, but it's really thin. and when it will go on, the underneath color will show through, and I wanted to make it a little darker, more mysterious, right? And the second thing is that these elements, this, and all the tie downs and all the guide for the chain in front are semi-gloss black as well. And rather than just painting everything individually and masking off and making a mess, you just spray everything and you're done. And this way you're gonna get a nice even finish. Now notice I haven't painted this. This is supposed to be, of course, white and then appropriately orangey or browny. So I'll do this next. I'll have to paint this white and mask off the black areas. So here we go. This is the painted compartment. Looks great, doesn't it? And if I put the small compartment, oh, I painted this bottom section as well. And if I put this small compartment here, look, it looks almost like a ship. Well, we're just one small step closer to the end, but we're still far off. So next step will be, God knows, probably the deck. After I attach the deck, I use some satin varnish to seal off the deck and make it a little bit more shiny. So I've painted this little hatch on top. Now I'll make some black dots on the sides to replicate the windows, and then we'll put it onto the ship. Here you can see the hatch on the deck. I also added this strip of styrene to be flush with the wooden deck. Now we need to attach the additional photo etch plates for the tie downs as marked on the deck. Alright, for this I had to change lenses because on this little plate are these little tiny tie downs. They're like this, right? And the problem with these are that they're machined, they're super small, and on the other side there's a little stub left. Let me just try to turn it over. You can see here, there's a little bit of a stud left from the machining process right in the center. And it has to be, this is the face down, so this is supposed to be facing on here. So the problem is you have to get rid of that little stub in order to place them down, otherwise it's not gonna be great. It's not gonna sit straight. So you get another bag of these tie downs, and these are the bigger ones, and these are okay. They don't have any studs left on the bottom from the manufacturing process. So yeah, I'll need to somehow get rid of that stud. So how to attach these bigger tie downs? So I'm using a slow drying CA glue, and then I'm just placing them down roughly where I think they should be. Right. And you have to be somewhat quick with this procedure, because although the CA glue is slow setting, it's still CA glue and it's gonna set. It's gonna turn into gel, and when it turns to gel, it's almost too late. So now that I have them roughly where I need them, like so, I'm looking at them from this profile, and you can see they're a little bent. So I'm just gonna rectify this problem by pushing them into one side like so, and try to make them stand upright and symmetrical with the other side. Alrighty then, so I've attached all the tie downs now, and they look absolutely fantastic. They're not that difficult to assemble. It's just you just need to get the hang of it, how the process works, and once you got that done, you just plop them on and they will hold. The easiest way to paint these tie downs was to use a brush and some black paint, and that's what I did, and this is the result. Alright, so if you're working with me along when using the same Flyhawk expansion set, you will notice that there's something missing in the instructions, and that would be this piece that goes here and diagonally, this splitter fence thing. It's on this sprue of Photo Etch D. It's a number 4, and this one, and you have to bend it at 45 degrees and attach it here. I've looked throughout the instructions and I couldn't find where you have to put this one. I just know that it has to be here because I removed it previously. So yes, it's on the D sprue of Photo Etch. Yeah, the way I'm gonna do this is I am going to remove the protective cover, paint it in white, and then attach it to the bow of the ship. The only reference in the Flyhawk's upgrade set is the last picture on the manual at page 5, where you can see it clearly here on the bow of the ship, but it's really small and it's not very well detailed, and the legs seem to be on the front, which is wrong, and I found out that the hard way because I had to remove them and place them on the back towards the stern. And here we have it, this Photo Etch piece that was bent into shape and painted in white. It was attached to the deck using super glue, and the legs are on the outside, which is wrong, but later on I fixed this problem and attached them to the inside. After that breaker was installed, the next was to attach the cover for the hatch, the 2 side supports, and I painted the previously added strip of styrene in wood color. Here is just a fun comparison between the vents on the deck. So this one is Flyhawk and the other one is from Airfix. You can see the difference. And here you can see all the painted elements that I've attached to the deck. You can see all the machinery and the hatch covers and the vent on the deck. Okay, so when we last left off, things were not as developed as they are right now. And I've inverted the standoffs. See, they're on the inside, the way they're supposed to be, not on the outside. And I'm pretty happy with the result. I also had to do another modification that you might have noticed, and this is this little hole in the middle. Now this hole is for the new mast. I bought myself Masters masts for Titanic in 1/400 scale, and these masts are made from brass. And these brass masts have to have a certain hole to fit them in. Originally here it was a rectangle, and that rectangle was used to place down the original mast from the kit, which was plastic, and you just slot it in and glue it in place. But these are round, and the round diameter of these is 2.2 millimeters. And they also have to go down into the deck. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but here on the bottom, there is a line that goes all around that shows you exactly how deep inside the hole the mast should go. And it's approximately this deep. And that meant drilling out the hole, not only on the top, but also through the metal on the bottom, which was a big, nerve-wracking experience because I didn't have a drill that is exactly 2.2 millimeters thick or wide. It's actually 2 millimeters. So basically what I've done was I used my little Dremel tool, this little ball that is actually 2.2 millimeters exactly wide, and I bored down the hole. I bored down the hole in this direction. Once the hole was made, I used the 2 millimeter drill bit and went down at a proportional angle, because the mast is at an angle. Whether or not it's a correct angle, I'm still not sure, but I can still wiggle it around once I figure it out. It's supposed to be something along these lines, right? Now you might think, well, now you have this huge hole, how are you gonna cover it? Well, luckily, Master gives you a little plate that goes over the hole, and it's this little plate here. See, I already cut it out. And you just put it on top, and it covers this hole nicely. So I'm not gonna be worried about any unwanted holes in the deck. So that's the thing that I had to do. The other thing that you need to consider with the mast is that this is a metal mast, which means that you need to use some sandpaper to rough up the surface before you glue it in place. So that's why this is still off the base of the ship hull. Now I have to figure out the correct angle at which this is supposed to be at, and kind of make this hole bigger in one's direction. So that's my next job. The assembly of Master's mast should have its own little mini-series, but here we go. I began by lightly sanding the whole mast with 1200 grit sandpaper. Then I attached the cover plate on the deck to cover the hole. I also made sure to find the correct angle. The angle of the mast can be determined by two things. First, the ladder that goes onto the mast, and second, the crow's nest. It has to be perpendicular with the deck. So that kind of gives you an eyeball estimate as to how far you need to lean the mast in order to be optically correct. I use this flexi extra thin cement to secure the plate in position, and use some tweezers to make it straight and level with the deck. Next, you need to find the hinge and bend it into shape that holds up the boom arm. It's here on the sprue. Bending this hinge is really delicate work, and it requires a very steady hand. Next, I place down these holders on the crow's nest and attach the mount for the light on top of the mast. Then it was time to assemble the crow's nest. Compared to other small pieces, the crow's nest came together very nicely. Just for funsies, I'm taking you up close and personal with the pieces of the mast. This is the light that goes on top, the crow's nest, and then you'll see the little hinge on the bottom. I'm pretty proud of that. And the rail holder thing where the crow's nest is. and the light mount on the very top of the mast. All the parts of the mast received a generous coat of Tamiya's gray primer, and then I proceeded to paint them in the appropriate colors. Here's a fun comparison between crow's nest from Flyhawk and Master. They're quite different from one another, and the one with Flyhawk has this little mesh on the bottom that I wanted to incorporate in the one from Master, but then disaster came. Now I have to tell you a little story. As I was trying to incorporate the Flyhawk's bottom mesh plate of the crow's nest into the Master's crow's nest, I encountered a big problem whilst gluing the mesh in the crow's nest. What happened was the bottle of cyanoacrylate unexpectedly opened up on me, and I flooded the entire crow's nest with the glue. That was a major blow to me, and I thought I ruined everything. So in my despair, I wrote to Master if they could send me a spare part, a spare crow's nest, and I just hoped for a good reply. But I wasn't counting on it, so I soaked the entire crow's nest in a little cup filled with VMS debonder, and after 3.5 hours, I managed to salvage every single piece, and it was a huge relief for me. However, I managed to ruin my cutting board, or actually cutting mat. See the stain? That's just CA glue all over the place. After I was done salvaging the part, I received an email from Master telling me that they can in fact send me a replacement part of crow's nest. But now I didn't need it anymore, so I asked for another favor. You see, on the mast there are 2 bells that need to be attached, one on the top and the other on the bottom. I lost one on the bottom. So embarrassingly, I asked for that favor and they delivered. They sent me the 2 bells. They came 2 weeks later, and wow, that is good customer service from Master. So I'm giving them a huge shout out. There's a link up there to their webpage if you want to check them out. And yeah, thank you Master for saving this build. After I painted the inside of the crow's nest, I attached a little light on the top of the mast. This is how it looks, it's just silver, and I attached the crow's nest. And if you think about the disaster that almost crippled the project, it turned out beautifully. Now what I'm going to attempt to do now is a bit of an overkill, but this is the reference photo, and you can see that there are a couple of things inside the crow's nest. The mesh, the handlebars that are already there, and these 2 squares, which I cut out from styrene and placed them inside the crow's nest and painted them up. The crow's nest also has these supports on the bottom, which I had to replicate using some stretch sprue. This tiny millimeter thin rods are basically just white sprue stretched to the limit and cut into size. I made 3 identical pieces, flattening one side that fits on the mast and the other is pointy. And then I used super thin CA glue to attach all 3 supports on the bottom, and this is the finished result. Beautiful mast from Master. This is garage build cover plate that is supposed to be on the deck of the Titanic, and it simulates the covers for the green winches. Right here in the middle, nice and snug. Happy with the fit and position of the part that I just manufactured. I sprayed it with black and secured it in place with cyanoacrylate glue. Next on the agenda was the winch crane that's in the nose of the Titanic. This is how it looks from the box, but we need to fix it because it's not correct. In order to make it more accurate, we need to fit these 2 side supports and do some other fine engineering to make it look just like in the picture. The anchor lift chains that you get inside the Airfix kit, they don't impress me much, so I use this trumpeter chains that you can buy separately, and they're not exactly to scale, but they will work for this project. So I just had to measure them, cut them to size, and paint them, and then of course attach them to their appropriate resting place. After they were painted, I attached them to the final resting place. They were not that difficult to attach, but you do need to be careful how you place them because you can easily scratch off the paint. I just secured them in place using thin CA glue. The last thing to do is to assemble the cranes. I use the ones that come with the Airfix kit. They come in 2 pieces, you glue them together, it's fine. I think you can buy Model Monkey's 3D printed cranes, but for the purposes of this build, I'm pretty happy with the ones that come with the kit. Anyway, you get to enhance them with the boom arms that come in the Flyhawk expansion kit, as well with the little cradle that sits on the side of the crane right over here. And as you can see here, the crane is pretty detailed, so I don't need to do anything else to it. Funny enough, now that I have said that, you do need to remove some surface detail from the side of the crane because you'll be replacing them with photo etch parts, notably the 2 ladders and a little hatch. This is the little cradle that sits on the side of the crane, and you need to bend it in right angle to make it fit properly. And you have to be really careful because it's super fragile. Here we are, the last 2 pieces of the bow deck are complete. Now we need to prime them and paint them in the appropriate colors, then place them onto the bow deck. That's it for this video. Join me back next time in part 3 when we will be tackling the stern of the ship. For now, thank you so very much for watching if you have been, and see you next time. Bye bye.